I want to finish the text. I want to take us to the last point from Reb Chaim, which will be the concept of tzvei dinim, which according to what I try to think with it. And I want to say it in the context of what I see as a hermeneutical challenge to modern literal sense, academic, historical, and so on way of reading text, which all the metaphysical, ontological, hermeneutical moment of it, I place with Spinoza's theological political treatise. So somehow I will have to build some kind of opposition, which it can be a bit crude, but it's in order to take us further. So then perhaps we'll be able to get rid of the oppositions in the way that I present them. But I don't know a better way to do it at the moment. Let me repeat the main things that, to repeat the main thing that we did in the last couple of days. Just that we have that in mind for those who are already, for those who fell asleep. So we had the text of Maimonides. The text of Maimonides includes two sections or two parts. The parts about the matzah is the dog door, and the question if the shepherds eat from that or do not eat for that. And that decides if you can use the matzah for in order to fulfill the commandment of matzah, eating matzah on Passover night or not. And Maimonides ends this halacha and it with this strange, now it looks strange formulation of why is the distinction between Isa when it's only for klavim or not? Because we have to guard the matzah for the sake of we have to guard the Isa or matzah for the sake of matzah, shmua. So, and we went with Soloveitchik, what I claim to be nothing very special in the way that he was doing 3 rounds. Like first he was trying, to find the source of this, which everyone knows. You just have to open any of Maimonides' commentaries, and it goes immediately to the Mishnah Tractate of Chala, which was this long list of things that if you do matzah out of dog dough, if the roim eat, yes, you can use it. If they don't eat, it's not applicable. And that was like challah, the first, the portion that you give to the Kohen. And then was a long list that later we said it's irrelevant according to Soloveitchik. So just let's put it aside because we don't want to get into it, but there are en mevarchim, and mezamnim, and mishtatfim, etc., etc. All of these, he says, it's not a question. And then there was the Passover matzah. So the challah and the Passover matzah, these are the two things which we have to deal. And then why? And the first intuition that everyone, even without studying a lot, what is the issue of challah? It's the portion that you take before it becomes lechem, and so. So the question was like, you take, and it makes sense for common sense, which we at the end try to take. The common sense, just the background of what of the question of hermeneutics that I found important. Common sense is our enemy. Yeah? Common sense is exactly what is imposed on us by the order, and as a hermeneutician, we have to break it up. But that is the kind of hermeneutics that we'll talk later. At the moment, the first thing that we do, and even if we don't want, is like we try to make sense of this, and we say, okay, let's go to the Mishnah. If the Mishnah, so why here, like, why challah? Challah because of lechem. Challah in terms of the portion that you give to the Kohen. So because of the concept of bread, that you need to have, and that is the principle. But if that's, then why the Mishnah? Sorry, why Maimonides says about matzah that it has to be ushmarten because of the guarding, the obligation to guard the matzah, and then he goes through several stages. First, he tries to show from the Rash that it's actually not so simple. You need challah. There is a specific reason. This specific reason applies only to the case of challah. Therefore, you need to add something else for matzah. Then he breaks it up and says it's not a good. And we went through several stages of this kind. What is important these stages, and that's what I try to emphasize again and again in these 3 days, were that these two things. One is first to ask, is it a reasonable way to analyze, to try to explain this text for Maimonides? And I said, probably we would do something either the same or something similar. We'll look for the origin of this decision. We'll go to the Mishnah. We will say it has to make sense in terms. We'll go to the main concept of our discussion. We'll try to make sense with this main concept that it doesn't contradict each other from one place to the other. We basically will do what these 3 things did, perhaps with certain difference. We don't. It's not necessary that we'll do exactly that, but we will do something very similar. And then, what I said yesterday, we came to the point where, according to my understanding, Soloveitchik begins. And that was, I said yesterday that the claim, the moment that he begins was very weak moment. If you look at it from the perspective of Lamdan, of Lamdanut, of Pilpul, of whatever, because he said he came to the point where there is in the Mishnayot, Perusha Mishnayot to the Rambam, it is clear that he is connecting it to the issue of challah and therefore matzah also. Yeah, and in the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides put it in relation to the guarding of matzah. It is in every aspect. It's like weak from the perspective of academic scholar who say you cannot compare these two things, you don't need the consistency here, person, and so on. And I think also from for most rabbinical classical interpretation, it will be very strong because they also, the distinction between the Mishneh Torah and the Perusha Mishnayot is clear. It's not like must say that's Maimonides is consistent here. But Soloveitchik insists here that something is, he begins with that. He sees that as the problem. And I say it's very weak, and I don't think by chance, I think because he's trying to show us now something new about the issue. It's not clear what bothers him so much here. I mean, and definitely mind like him could have come with a better question if he wanted. It's not so difficult for Lamdan like him. So the point is that, and I said, and then we began to read, and he says, "Hine בעיקר הדין משומרת, יש תרי דיני." That's in the main issue of what is משומרת, guarded for the sake of matzah. There are not two issues, tvei dinim. That's the concept that we now have to get into. And he says, the first thing is, and that's from, did you get the text from today? Yeah. I think yeah. We will come back to that, but just look for a second. On page 2, Rambam, Chametz u'Matzah, the first on page 2. So the second the second paragraph on this Rambam. הלכה ט' משום שנאמר, because it said, ושמרתם את המצות, כלומר, היזהרו במצב ושימרו אותם מכל צד חימוץ. You have to be whatever, to be careful, to be alert, to be whatever that's what means, and you have to guard it from every aspect of from every side of leavened bread. It's a very awkward formulation. I mean, what exactly? Page 2 from today's Rambam Chametz u'Matzah הלכה ט'. So he takes Mishmartem B'Matzot and it's that. So we'll come back to that Rambam because it's Soloveitchik is not going to that, but I just want. He begins with the Tzveidinim and says one thing about to keep the matzah is to make sure that that's when he discusses what is matzah and so on. Just we will come back to that because it's. I'm just saying it's a very strange way to put because it says Shmartem Damatzot, which is Bechilta, etc. But still, it's strange that from to have it guarded from any aspect of chimutz. What that is what matzah is. No, you have to keep matzah anyway guarded for. So, what is the guarding? What is the addition of the guarding? Yeah? And that is a question of discussion that comes in Yerushalmi and the Bavli in several places, and in the Midrashim and so on. We'll come back partly to that. But the point is that the first point of Soloveitchik in the Trei Dinim, what we said, Chada, that we saw yesterday, it's like the end of the, if you look at Soloveitchik, then it's here. Yeah? Just the last line of the second page. I mean, the first row. So the first point is that you have to keep matzah, not to get chametz, and you have to guard it, not to become chametz. That is one thing of matzah shmura, and we'll see more perhaps about that later. Okay, and what is the other thing? And here is the crazy thing that I tried to make sense yesterday. The crazy formulation, which is Soloveitchik formulation, which is like very typical Soloveitchik formulation, or is like ועוד יש בדין בהחפצה שיחול בה שמשומרת לשם מצה. Which yesterday I tried to make sense of that and just to explain what exactly he had in mind. And what does it mean? Because at the beginning it says, okay, you have to keep it and then you have to have the name. I tried yesterday with the example of Adidas, with the example of the American dollar, with the example of Van Gogh, to make some sense of that. That's there is a moment which is a text is related to textuality and law and many other textual aspects, which bring into the hefza, which we said object, with all the problem of this concept. The object becomes an object when the name of that object is attributed to it. And that is the moment that the object is an object. Before that is not an object. So, and after that is like the Adidas thing, that's if you go to, if it's, and the whole concept, modern concept of fake, like, yes, you have fake Van Gogh, it's not Van Gogh, although it's the same, or fake Adidas, which is like, it can be exactly the same thing, but it doesn't have the textual social support in order to become, in order that the object itself will get the name that makes it into an object. And I think Soloveitchik is very aware, is very brilliantly aware of that in many cases, and that is a very central point where he is always trying to find out how is the relation between the text and the fact that an object in the world becomes what it is because without saying it, not because the text say that it's the object, but because of the work of textual work, it becomes what it is. That's the point. That's you have, because of the law, because of whatever you have. At some moment, you can say, yeah, this is matzah shmure. This is a dollar. This is
Here specifically, right? It has to be a process, namely, at the very first moment of intending to have a right?
Yeah.
So it has to accompany the whole process of production, right? From the very first moment, right? They need to be. I mean, the trading have to be together at all times.
That's what is. I mean? I think, yeah. I think I understand. Perhaps we'll get to that when we say because when do you guard the matzah? Yeah, in general, or even the first side of this issue, the third aspect of the first din. When do you have to guard the matzah? And we will see. There is a problem. This is a problem since the Amoraim. Sorry, since the Tanaim till much later, because it's really not clear what, because we even don't know what is to guard the matzah, right? What is it? And therefore I also, this is from today. Just look at the quotation that I quote from the Protestant Bible. Yeah? We have on page 1. It's a Protestant Bible because there is no Rashi, so it cannot be a Jewish Bible. It says, Shivat yamim matzot tochlu. You have the English down, I mean at the bottom, but I thought that, look at this, at the third, okay, let's read it fast. Shivat yamim matzot tochelu, אך ביום הראשון תשביתו סור מבתיכם, כי כל אוכל חמץ ונכרתה נפש האם ישראל מיום הראשון עד יום השביעי, וביום הראשון מקרא קודש, וביום השביעי מקרא קודש, יהיה לכם כל מלאכה לא תעשה בהם, אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש, יאכל לכל ולבדו יעשה לכם. יפה. And then come this phrase, ושמרתם את המצות, כי בעצם היום הזה הוצאתי את צבאותיכם מארץ מצרים, ושמרתם את היום הזה לדורותיכם חוקת עולם. Okay? And then בראשון ב-14 you eat matzah and so on. Now, just look at the translation and look at the third paragraph. I quoted 3 different, I could have quoted, I think I didn't quote Luther, but I quoted only Jewish, but just like, look at the difference of the interpretation of the translation. The first one, I don't remember which one it is. You say, you shall observe the fast of unleavened bread. It says, Ushmartem et hamatzot. Yeah? And then it says, and you observe, not guard, but observe, which can be, yes, it's not like impossible. Shamor et yom HaShabbat, we understand it as observe, but this is not like translation. And the third, look now, one paragraph under that is Hirsch. Das ist bestimmt schon Fall Hirsch. He said, und ihr sollt die ungesäuerte Brote hüten. Yeah? So he is more like what that's unleavened. He doesn't say matzah. Yeah? So this unleavened bread, you have to protect. How do you say hüten? To guard, yes, to guard, I think will be the best. So it's closer, although he doesn't say the matzah. And the third one, I think, is a more rabbinical translation, which immediately, someone more rabbinic, then he tried to keep, I think, more like something else. Says, and you shall watch over the matzot, that they do not become chametz. Yeah, that is already someone. He immediately, but has to explain you what do you mean to. So it won't become chametz. And I bring all of that because where have we been? Sorry. Yeah. So the point is that we have like this kind of commandment, mitzvah, ushmartem et hamatzot. It's also not clear if it's a mitzvah, because then there is a discussion if it's a mitzvah, why it's not in Sefer HaMitzvot for the Rambam, and there is no mitzvah in Sefer HaMitzvot ushmartem et hamatzot. So that is also a background for some of the discussion here, which I don't get into, because it's not a mitzvah for itself. So it has to be understood in relation to something else, like for the mitzvah of matzah, for the mitzvah of chametz, for the mitzvah of korban, for something has to be related to that, because it's a certain kind of mitzvah, but not really a mitzvah. Okay. So we had that on the one hand, the first part. Ushmartem tamatzvot, you have to, that's salvation. Now I get back to the Tzvei Dinim. And you have that other part, which is the name that's get into the object in this certain way that we tried to discuss yesterday. And now I want to discuss the point of the Tzvei Dinim that he brings, or to begin to address this issue. Like, there is, as much as I know, there is no precedent for that in the history of the Jewish text of this concept. I mean, not in anything similar to that. And there is the question of what exactly does he say. It's along practical understanding, because no one explained ever. I mean, if someone explains, like me, try to explain, then he's not part of the game. He's trying to reflect on the game in rabbinic, in Talmudic lamdanut way. So, what can it be that he means? But you can see how people duplicate or try to imitate the way. It's a very common thing. That's all the yeshiva after him the whole time are doing tzvei din. They're doing that, tzvei din, that. It's also become part of the culture of jokes. You can do, there are jokes about tzvei din in the yeshiva and so on. It's like a very strong concept. I want to go against the most of it and to try to show that there is a very important moment. And let me, before that, look at what he did before and bring it back to this thing that I said about Spinoza. So what are we doing when, and I'm doing it very shortly, because seriously, not seriously, but to do it fully, we have to go back to this text of I think, of the TTP, of the Theological Political Treatise, to understand the question of literal sense, then to understand how do you read the Bible, to understand what does it mean politically. I mean, a few of you have been to this series of talks that I gave at Johns Hopkins about these issues, and that was I connected it to the issue of ontology and to the issue of the political, and tried to show how and to the question of secularism and critique of secularism and the concept of critique of itself. So I gave that by Yitzchak Me'amed and last year on Zoom for 3 lectures, which I tried to show how this, our concept of, that's actually what I claim there, and I'm saying it now only like as slogans, because I just want you to understand where I'm trying to push them. So secularism, I claimed, is secularism is biblical. Bible, this Protestant Bible, is what we understand as secularism. Secularism is not an abstract thing. It cannot be an abstract thing. It's philosophical claim, if you wish, not like historical, okay? It's philosophical and hermeneutical one. And that and it comes with the concept of critique, which we all use the whole time. what supposedly do at the academia is the humanities and social sciences and so on. I claim then that this is the basic tool in order for the European colonialism to come into being. That without this, or not without this, I'm very careful about without that, because I'm trying to explain hermeneutics. I'm trying to show what enables certain kind of ontology and reality the understanding of reality and relate to it. So not to say that it's not possible otherwise. Perhaps there is possibilities. I'm not trying to show how it's emerged. And then I try to show how from this understanding of the Bible and the understanding of reading of the Bible and the understanding of literal sense and understanding of what we do as critical thinkers, I think that's what we share here together in a certain way, is actually an ideological, secular Protestant work. That we are actually all under this, and I say Protestant in a very particular way, but that we are all actually agents of Martin Luther.
What do you mean? You want to clarify what is Protestant?
In a moment, I'm not entirely, because otherwise I will have to talk now a few hours. But just like I think a bit, I will try. Let me give. Okay, I will answer you now with the following. The reading of what is to read something and to relate to a text. Okay. And I'm not trying to do all exactly, I'm not saying the opposite, but I'm not trying to do hermeneutics Gadamer or hermeneutics Schleiermacher or whatever, or later. I'm trying exactly to take hermeneutics to another place. So let me first begin with something very as if abstract, and then to go, repeat the question, what do you mean by?
You want to clarify what exactly is the meaning that you relate
to Protestant? No. Where does okay, so let me begin in another place. How do you do hermeneutics? What does it mean? And I will not just work with me a bit. I'm not going now to discuss it really, but just that you can understand. I think you can. We have a text, right? This, okay? This is a material object in the world. Everyone knows. We have people who discuss the meaning, the matters of that, and how the print come, and how others. And then I say, okay, within the book, there is meaning. And I'm now looking for the work of the hermeneuticians, okay? Not the work, not the other one. I'm trying to understand say something about what is hermeneutics and what someone with, and all of us doing some way hermeneutics, or discuss it. And if you work with Spinoza has many interesting things about that. I think formulating some of our wrong beliefs, a strong belief. It's what do you do when you do hermeneutics? And a literal sense, hermeneutic Protestant in that sense, that will to go also as the Protestant. You have to, Protestant, again, don't ask me what Protestant, okay? Because I think you will understand the principle of sola scriptura and all of that, it's a kind of, Spinoza is a kind of metaphysical and philosophical thing. He doesn't believe in Jesus. He does actually, but he doesn't know that. No, I will say it because Spinoza is definitely the one who repeat. I think that the theological political treatise and the whole principle of modern interpretation, as he presented it, and the whole principle is connected to the difference between letter and spirit. And he repeats this discussion of letter and spirit in his version. But without this metaphor, he cannot distinguish between the rabbinical reading or the Catholic reading, which I think for him it's basically quite the same, the wrong reading, which he sees like a certain kind of dedication to the letter, that you say what the letters say, yeah, which is the strangest thing for someone who is doing before his work, but you can say what the letters say, and then you're a bloody rabbi or a bloody Catholic. And he, I think, I don't know who he hated more, Catholic or rabbis for Spinoza at his life, but I think both of them were not bad. And you can understand you can really go to the meaning of the text by itself, which is the spirit. One of the meanings, one of the ways that Spinoza explained this difference. He really speaks in these terms. It's not like I'm interpreting. He uses the term spirit, uses that also. He says when Moses broke the tables, he didn't break the wall. The meaning of the wall this day, that is the spirit. What he broke was the letter. Never mind now, the whole, he has different ways of, this metaphor is very, very important one. And you cannot really conceptualize, that's the point. If you conceptualize, you miss it. But if you, so what are we doing? We take the text and we say, and I think we all do it in the same, in a way. We try, and that's the interesting thing. We don't have to try to even to get to the mind of the prophet, which we try. As Spinoza says, let's clean the text, clean it from. Let's study the language and knows what it means at that time. Let's study the history and know what it can be in the context of history. What is the science of that time? So what the prophet can believe and what he can't believe. What false ideas he can have and what not, and so on and so forth. What is the corruption of the text? The actual letter is being corrupted by some people. Let's study that. He goes all of the things that we do today, and at some point you get, and Spinoza says, I'm not interested in the truth of what the prophet says or what the Bible says. I'm interested in the meaning, that it has meaning. That is the only thing of the work of the hermeneutician literal sense of one. And in order for that, there are several stages that you get. And what does it mean? That you can somehow, that's I'm saying now, again, in a very short way, connection to the question of ontology. How literal sense is connected to ontology in partly. What you have to define, what you have in this, it can be, you can have a set, even if you take it like an abstract analytic philosopher as a text and so on. What you do is you present certain kind of what, for sure, I will call at the moment now, this kind of presence. That's at that time, you can see the mind in relation to the world as it was when it is expressed. And there is the moment that the meaning will come to you. Because you cannot really, the meaning is not something that the meaning should come, yeah? That's the point. The meaning is not in this sense when you say something. But what you do, so that is one of the things. You have a moment, this moment is very important because that is already modern, I think. This moment, that's the mind and the world stand in this state of the present, what the historian does, what the critical thinker in a way tried to do, and so on. And it's not to have the mind of the prophet, it has to have the mind, the possible mind and the possible world. And the most important thing is this now. There is a relation between reality and the mind in this in the concept of now. I leave now the concept of now, but I think that you understand that there is, it has to do not in the past, but it has to have what happened at that moment of the prophet, that it had meaning. What was the meaning at that moment? And that moment has to be depicted as the moment of reality, as the moment of when things happen, the moment of this now. What are we doing then when we take the text? Let me just give you what I'm trying to do with hermeneutics. What we try to do then is hermeneuticians, like historians, you think like you see historian and you see, oh, these are really people who respect texts, right? But actually, historians and readers are the people who despise text more than anyone else, because what they try to do is to take away all the obstacles, all the corruption, everything that the text is, and to bring it to this world of spirit where there is meaning and world at the same time, and that was the origin, whatever, or it's not the origin, but the moment of this reading or whatever. But it's like to get rid. It's to clean. They are cleaners. They are trying to clean the text from its textuality. That is the false work of hermeneutics. And what I'm trying to suggest, not with me, I mean, I'm just, I wish I could imitate Elchanan in this tone of modesty when he says, I'm the smallest of all small, but I can't because I'm arrogant. Not that he is, no. I'm trying to get into to redefine this concept of hermeneutics, not to redefine, to problematize the concept of hermeneutics and to formulate it in this way that, let me before that say something. What we do is basically we come back to linguistic and philosophy of language and everything like that, and that's how we think we can explain text. So basically we want to go back to a very small unit, not a text, the unit of a sentence. There's something proposition that makes sense in our modern world, but never mind now. Other times we're not going to discuss that. And we want to trace back and to reduce textuality into that. And the way that I'm trying under the certain thing that I call tradition, although I don't know if there is such tradition, perhaps it will be now, is to show the reader, the hermeneutician should, for him, hermeneutics is that's to point to the fact that there is meaning is because of a text. Yeah, that he has to always to refer to the text as something like that's give meaning, not going back to the language. We go exactly to this, not trying to trace it, not trying to reduce it to linguistic and if I think all of you have read Freud on the dreams, interpretation of dreams, or Freud on the joke and so on. And I think there, without getting now into details, but I think just think about that, one of the strongest one is the fascinating and amazing point there is that Freud understands exactly, not exactly, okay? And Freud is also having this moment that he comes back to scientific Freud but I think what is really fascinating there are the moments that you see that Freud see in the dream something that you cannot reduce to just a rational language or whatever. This is something that stands there, and that's what gives meaning. That's exactly where meaning happens, not anywhere else in that is the place where you have to look. If you are trying now to reduce the dream to a meaningful unconsciousness, you become American psychologist, right? It's like this, okay, and I will solve you also your neurotic problems, and that is not Freud. One of the things that we do, so I took Freud, now put Freud aside because he's not the topics of discussion, the topic of Soloveitchik. I think one of the things that we do always, almost, is and it's extremely strong in our understanding of interpretation. The way that we understand is that we look for the central concept or concepts of the text or the matrix of text. In that case, of Talmudic especially, it's not one text, it's always like several texts that you refer to each other. And a good commentator, I mean a brilliant commentator, like the Pilpul, after, not exactly the Pilpul, but great mind, like, I don't know, Rabbi Akiva Eger or something like that, is to try to find, to give some kind of strong enough definition of the concept, or it won't be a definition, but inquiry, analysis of the concept, that it will be functioning in all the different texts, and it's fine, you don't have contradictions. That will be a wonderful work. Like, so you tell me, no, you don't, I don't know. A chair is not something that's just with 4 chairs and plastic on top of that. That is not true. Let me redefine it that you understand chair here and chair by the shop. So remove first, take out the plastic. It's not necessary to have the plastic as part of this code, and so on, till we come to some clear size concept. And I think basically that's what Soloveitchik did in the first stages that we have. He tried to take text, each time he tried to take some concept to show how this concept can explain why here it's like that, and here it's like that, and here it's like that. And it's like very analysis of the concept. And what he's doing now, what is the Tzvedim? And that's what I see is contribution to this project of working, challenging modern hermeneutics. He's coming with this concept of Tzvedim. And it's very, you don't know the other economists, but it's very interesting. For instance, his Tzveidim never comes as like later in some by some of his students. It's never come by positive and negative, or opposition, or negation. There is no dialectics here. They don't come into. There is no Aufhebung. There is no. These two aspects, these two Tzveidim, like here, I will try perhaps to understand, but they come as two different aspects of the main concept, which he says here, but they are together because a concept comes as multiple, which is the most difficult thing to understand. I think Nietzsche's genealogy is much built on that issue, if you follow it, but let's leave for a moment Nietzsche, because I don't think Nietzsche had hermeneutics. I think Soloveitchik is exactly the point. He tries to show us in things that we studied already for generations of brilliant people, that is not the question, how there is a moment which I think you can, even if it's not a moment of a great questions about what they did. As I said, the reason that he goes to Tzveidim here is not just once you want to ask. Oh, okay. He brings in this concept of Tzveidim. There are two aspects of this Matzah Shmura. And he says these two aspects are Beikar Adin, like without anything. He's like, now the point is, I think, that he is always not trying to figure out the moment. That will be critical history. Yes, that will be the without getting it, but that will be the misunderstanding of Foucault of Nietzsche's genealogy. That will be the moment that say, okay, and that's near now. They no. This, if you want to understand the concept, how it comes to that, and Nietzsche almost says I think quite clearly. You have to see the moment of impossibility to take them apart and still to be able to show this taking apart of them. And here too, but in every, be aware, Tzveidim is not like I can show a distinction in something. Zwei dinim is that I can show that there is one thing, one concept, that there is this distinction in, or certain kind of distinction, but in order for that concept to be the concept, it needs these two things to be and not to be one. So you can never really put out, because the moment that you put it out as two things, then you have a chiluk, you don't have zwei dinim. You fall into this idea that you have, you will have, okay, in that case it's like that, in that case Matzah Shmura means that, in that case Matzah Shmura means that. No, Matzah Shmura has to go this concept together. You can see that it's not, you can, it's, I would say in theological Hebrew, back from the Muslim, there is a chad, but there is no yichud. Yeah, the concept is one, and that is the most essential thing here. You cannot get rid of the oneness of the concept because then you lose everything. That's the point. But there is no yichud. There is no. It's not. There is no inner unity of the concept. It's just something that comes together, like here. And the point is that you go step by step. If you work with Soloveitchik, I think, is like you come to the moment where you see that now I will explain you back the text that I saw. That's what he would say. That's the other text. And look at it. In each place, you see how a concept plays a role that, because it's a concept, but it doesn't, you cannot from the text itself take out and say it's only that. And that will be developed among text. So there is no moment of how to know. I think that is the moment where he is like, so he comes to a moment where he shows you, yes, I can give you another pilpul and I can give you another limud and I can give you another thing, but there is an aporia, something like I think he feels here. Something, I need to explain you something about Matzah Shmura that will make sense for Maimonides in the way that there is sense to bring it in, as Maimonides does. And he says that will not come from another pilpul. That will come if you understand that the concept itself of Matzah Shmura and the Rambam. The Rambam is just a player in a game where Matzah Shmura exists because Rambam exists. Yeah? It doesn't exist in another world. It exists in the textual world, but the textual world Maimonides is part of. So he cannot, he is playing within already a game that's Matzah Shmura there, and it can make sense what he says when it's there. Okay, I think now I will open it for question, and then we will do another readings. And so, if you wish, yeah. Or we need a break? No. Okay. Yeah.
So I just want to, are you reading, use yourself as reading or flying against the grain, because he explicitly presents here the two dinim as coming from a reading of the text, right? He says, I want to say that challah and matzah are two totally separate things.
Yeah.
But what I do is your perspective, Rambam says that you can't have matzah unless it's something that could be challah, and that's how he gets to. So you have to be somehow abstracting from what Reb Chaim himself is saying. I mean, and I assume that you're comfortable saying that. I just want to hear you.
Yeah. No. I don't think I have to take it so far. I think what Chaim says here is that. Yeah, I have two texts by Maimonides. One is the Perush Mishnah, one is that. And I'm not comfortable with the fact that, but now how would I explain it, yeah? So one way to explain it will be to say, no, there is one concept that is fine with all places, but there is some distinction in the third, because in that case, the Rambam speak about that, in that case, we speak about, but that is not what he's doing. That's the point. The point what he's doing here is not like trying to go back like the other pilpulim that he did before, or the other ways of explanation and say, let me show you. He comes from the beginning and says, there are two aspects for this concept. And if you understand why there are two aspects, you understand also why he used that here and that's here. But he's trying to say this concept never comes as one thing. Concept is not like a ready-made concept, because I'm using concept because we believe that the concept is ready-made and is somehow abstract, it's somehow one, and I can get to that. And he says, but if you take this view of the concept of the Matzishmure, with these two two aspects of that he gave, then you will see why in Pirush HaMishniot it's like that, and here it's like that. But for that, you have to assume certain kind of possibility that's to understand the concept. So again, so in a way, I'm saying something against what you attributed to me. If you go, you will be able. Even God, let's say it like that. Even God didn't know what the concept of Matzishmure will be, because the concept of Matzishmure is created within the game of the textual game. And only then you can attribute, so there is no pure somewhere world where the concept of Matzishmure existed before. It exists because it plays within this text, and within this text, it was created as a double in this way. And then it makes sense. And then what I do now, I think he says, is, and that was, and okay, let's go on right now. Question.
You're saying something, the way you use concept sounds to me that you're saying construct. The way you move around with the word concept, it's not how you describe it.
It's not what? It's not?
You're describing the problem with the word concept because and the way you're using concept sounds to me like you're talking about construct.
Yeah, but constructs are not. Yeah, I will tell you first what the problem is. When people say construct, yeah, or social construct, etc. And now I will go with the late Spinoza, not with the. Human beings and the mind is part of the reality, right? So to say that it's a human construct.
No, not human construct. We're talking about a multiplicity.
Yeah.
A tomato is round and red.
That's true.
That's a construct.
Yeah, it's not.
And then the tomato is a constructed of different. I'm not talking about the constructor. Not that.
Okay, yes. I'm speaking about the possibility. I don't know if I call it construct entirely, because that's, again, you already have an idea of a construct. For instance, the red apple means that you can have apple which is not red, right? And that's exactly what Spinoza, that's exactly what Chaim doesn't want, because he wants exactly, he says.
Red cucumber. So let's talk about a green cucumber that doesn't exist in a different color. You know, those.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's exactly what you do now is to get away from the text and say, let's do it abstractly. Yes, which is let's talk about. But I think what he's trying here is to do exactly the moment of the moment that's these two the textual moment to study exactly this textual moment as he did and what he will do. Where these two things come together as something that we know as Matzishmure. That's what we know. We think about it, we don't think about it. Matzishmure is one concept for us. Yeah, you don't speak about it as things that have different concept inside, or that is what it is.
But I'm saying that many things have one name and then you have attributes. It's not a problem.
But I don't speak about name and attributes. That's exactly the point. Speaking about, you are going back to Aristotle and to this kind of logic, or the other ways. I'm speaking about the very thing that comes to us as a concept. And forget for a second about Aristotle. I know that's impossible, but try to forget for a second. You have, you go to buy Matzishmure, yeah? It's an object with a concept, and the concept, never mind now the whole explanation, let's we go. You have the name and the concept of Matzishmure, and it's not like for you when you come and say, okay, and Matzishmure is like one thing like that and one. No, it's a concept which is one. But the point is that the oneness is the coverage of how it came into being, because the production of it is textual, and the production is never something that's come with the idea of unity, except for theological belief in the concept that there is something, and that's I now give Soloveitchik a bit of different words. I don't think he will agree with what I'm saying now, but he doesn't have to.
I'll try to continue. So I'm going back to the example of painting. Adidas shoes. So we have this Adidas shoes. So we have two things, right? We have the name Adidas, and we have some system that says when we're allowed to put a name, when to take the jail, they put a name. We have something about the shape of the shoe, the quality of the shoe, whatever, stuff like that. Now you're saying that in that sense, it's not two things, it's not dualistic, it's one thing. Why?
Because think about the Adidas. When you go to the shop and buy, you have
two things.
No, you have Adidas shoes.
No, but you have one thing that you could separate it. You could analyze it.
But
you can't say, well, we have one thing and that's it. We're not checking, we're not exploring each aspect by itself. We could.
Yes, you explore it.
Obligated to explore this aspect and explore this aspect both together all the time.
But according to you, you have to go. Basically, what you do is go to the shop, and say, okay, give me something like Adidas.
So give me Adidas. Adidas is a name that has under it a group of qualities.
Yeah.
And then they remove the box and open the box. If I find something different.
But that's the point.
That doesn't give me the sufficient conditions of Adidas. So I'll say, well, you're right.
Yeah. Now, if I give you the sufficient condition of Adidas and it's fake.
No, that's one of the conditions.
The name.
No. Fakeness is one of the conditions.
The what?
Fakeness, it shouldn't be fake.
But what is to be fake?
So we'll talk about it. We have different accounts. We'll decide if it's a system that decides. Core decides.
No, but I mean, you give several. I give you the same. It was produced in the same factory. It has the same materials.
That's not the question. Either it will be Adidas, either it will not. I don't know.
That's true.
Same factory, not same factory, but whatever explanation we'll give, eventually we'll come to the conclusion. We have a set of definitions, and one of them is that whoever is authority to decide this is Adidas gave the stamp. This is Adidas. That's it. That's one of the conditions.
You repeat you do something like which I don't say it's for sure, but it sounds like a bit like the ontological proof that there are several things and existence. And here you do something similar because you say what I think he said and what I understand, and that's exactly yes. The name Adidas doesn't add anything to the object. It is the object. That is what happens here. It's like you go and buy Adidas.
Can you imagine a situation when you have the name Adidas and you have whoever has the authority, the sign, this is Adidas, the CEO of Adidas company, sign, this is Adidas.
Yes.
But the shoe, while it's shipping from, where's Adidas?
Germany.
Oh, Germany. Yeah, okay. So it was being shipped to Israel, so the shoe got moved. So now, is it still Adidas or not?
Of course.
If you have a matzah, the matzah got, I'm going back to the
yes.
The matzah got sharing, din, hefza, whatever you want. And then water spilled on the matzah and it became chometz.
That's impossible, but yeah.
No, that's how it could happen.
Yeah. Right?
If you accept we're not talking about specific to the matzah. So then it's still going to be a matzah.
It will be a matzah. Yes, why not? I mean, you can say it's a destroyed matzah. Like I would say, it's a destroyed Adidas.
It's a big time. I didn't say it's a matzah. It's not a matzah.
Okay, so then it's changed. It's another object. I don't say that you cannot destroy Adidas and to annihilate it.
It's only one of the qualities. So you are saying that you could separate qualities from an object.
Of course you can, but that is the point of the Tzvei. Look at what he says. He says first you have to have all of the things that make it matzah shmura, right? And then it has to be also matzah shmura in itself, right? I mean, I'm just looking at it as a. Now, what does it mean? I mean, you can say that is nonsense, but I think it's not, because I think like that is exactly the point. You have objects in the world. The object is having certain many aspects. I mean, you name here, but you can name several institutions, text, laws, cultural text, whatever, advertisement, and so on. All of them are textual aspects, which at some point, and I don't know each one point, that is part of the inquiry that the hermeneutician has to do, is to study what is the moment or how, or in what ways all of these texts become at some point the thing that you cannot distinguish them. But then, okay, but that is this. But what is the Tzvei Dinim is further. It's more than that. I mean, it's like, sorry, Tzvei Dinim also doesn't have to be formulated in this way, right? We have Tzvei Dinim that is not formulated like the thing in this way, like here, and all of the thing, and the Schechter. It can be without Schechter at all. Yeah. The point of Tzvei Dinim is that you can somehow see, you can somehow take, according to, that's the way that I take it to. I mean, I'm not sure even if Reb Chaim would put it this way. I don't care now. Not that I don't respect him. I think he's for me, he's one of the greatest teachers that I had. But the point is that you take, you inquire, you study something, and I think we all do it so much. Like it's like the most obvious things that we do. We try to find in the text this concept, this term. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a concept, but let's call it the concept is easier to explain. Something that I can define and so in a way that will work differently in different places and still will be the same. That is our traditional way of, that is our, I leave aside for a moment the literals and the Protestant because it's like taking another step, which this is the step of subjectivity, which comes out of the text, and I put it aside for now. And that is the step that happens in Spinoza theological political treatise, that subjects come out, the modern subjects come out, the citizen for him. But let's leave it aside. But if you have the Tzvei Dinim, I think it's like always, it's a moment where, as a hermeneutician, you look at what you did, or others did, with the text, which is part of what the thing is. It's not what the interpretation for you at the moment that it comes, the text when you do with that, it comes in a certain way with all of these texts that we discuss. And at that moment, you can, I think he looks back and say, look what you're trying. You're trying again and again to find the thing that will solve the problem. This thing that will explain everything. This concept, this term, this that can happen. And he said, but who told you, where did you come this metaphysical view that a concept is something is one in the sense that it has a unity, it's one in the sense that it's yichud, that there is nothing, that it's exactly, that it is not dual, that it's not multiple.
Only if you accept Aristotle substances.
No, but I think what he says, it's much.
So you still, you maybe say there's two objects together, the thing.
No. No, they are not.
No, we have to say unity.
Yeah, they are not two objects. I'm trying to say how we work as hermeneutician. Forget for a second. You always try to explain the Aristotle metaphysics. I'm saying as a hermeneutician, you look at that and you try to figure out what is that thing that I can really define it, and that's what plays in the different texts. And I think he goes and says, look at what you are doing, or I say for him, okay? Look at what you are doing as a researcher, as a philosopher, as a mathematician, as a historian. I think historians are the best example, most historian of text, but serious, I'm now without, to take the serious walk. I'm not speaking here about something which is not serious. Take the most serious walk what we do. Take Spinoza, take others, and see what they do. And you will find that actually we are trying to, it makes sense at the moment that I can explain something as if it's contained by itself and can be explained in different places. And that's exactly the moment that he, I think, always comes with the Tzvei. The moment that he says, it plays like one thing the whole time. And that is the power of the concept. And you cannot separate the concept entirely, because if you, and that he says many times, this, even I think in this text, it comes to the point of tzrichuta, that you need the two of them together. You cannot, it's not chiluk, it's not like saying, here it's like that, here it's like that. Here this concept means that, here this concept means that. No, it's the same concept, it plays in different, and this concept doesn't come from itself, from Har Sinai. This concept exactly is the work of the text. If you don't have the text, you don't have this concept in this multiplicity, which imposes also the unity of that, because without unity, we have no textual work. I mean, that's what I'm trying to work and to show how, I mean, just to open. First, I just want to finish the text here to see how he just finish it, which is not finishing at all. But he is doing it. Then I want to, and the questions help me a lot, because as I said, it's part, I mean, I love Reb Chaim, I love reading him by itself. It's one of the very few texts that I admired as a kid and I still admire today. I read it as a young teenager, and we heard it. And till today, I think I didn't understand what I think I understand today, but I still feel that way. There are very few people like I read young, and I still feel Nietzsche, another one that's, probably many people who see Nietzsche, the philosopher, first they read him as teenagers and get enthusiastic about Nietzsche, and then you cannot bear the presence of him, and then you understand that actually he's a philosopher of philosophers. And then you begin to read Nietzsche again and to restudy it, and then you discover something entirely different from what you had as a teenager. I'm just taking several. So let's finish first reading the text. Then what I said is questions are very helpful for me, because I tried somehow to locate Chaim, although as I said, I love him reading him, I just enjoy reading him, but I also think he's also part of this challenge hermeneutic that I'm trying to bring to wherever, where to bring to the world or to the afterworld or whatever, and which is part of the story of Spinoza and Nietzsche and Reb Chaim, so, which he takes this issue of the hermeneutics, which enables, I think, to challenge the basic thing that's at the end comes, hermeneutics at the end that supports the creation of the modern subject, which as I see in Spinoza. So I don't know anyone else for me that's enabled this challenging this, and I will say it again shortly, just in order to perhaps it will make sense in a way. There is, for Spinoza, there is a space where the text happens at the end, after this whole critical way of reading. He calls this the new method, what he calls about his own way of reading but before, and we don't have even not time, we don't even have any of the time that's and we need in order to read that. But I'm just, so if it doesn't make sense, I don't know how to make sense of that more. But if you follow Spinoza and you ask yourself, where does, before Spinoza, I ask you, where does the prophecy and the revelation happens? And there are several stages also in Spinoza. But the first stage, you think Spinoza begins with a very materialistic reading of, and it happens in the mind, in the brain, in the mind of the prophet. Yeah, that is the place where this happens, the revelation. Whatever it is, never mind. It can be just this stupid nonsense of whatever, but that's where it happens. And then he investigated further and further and show you the different fields that you have to put inside, which is the language, the laws of physics, the beliefs in the laws of physics, the wrong beliefs in the laws of physics, and so on and so forth. And all of that in order to describe the meaning of what does it mean that all this revelation takes place. Even if there is no revelation, yes, in the sense we don't have to believe in revelation in order to find a place in the world. Because Spinoza, in that sense, also in the disaster of the theological political treatise, he has this materialistic understanding of the world. He never wants that, and I think that's in ethics is much stronger. Thought is not outside of the world. You have to depict the way in which it is part of the world for Spinoza. And I say it's a very so where does it happen for the prophet? And you depict it, and then the point of Spinoza, and then again I'm just jumping the whole process and saying, okay, but now there are no, as he says, there are no prophets, and what we have is the text of the Bible. Right? And we are trying now to read the text of the Bible and to find the meaning of prophecy. That's it. That is my work, the critical work. And I have to do many things like historians, like I have to find how the books came to me. I have to find who edited the books and what ideology was there. I have to clean, to do a lot of cleaning work. I have to tell you what was the world at that time, what were the enemies, what people believe that's about the sun and about their mothers. And they still didn't have Freud, and they didn't know that they want to, never mind, all of that they still didn't have. And now it will be interesting to show, but I don't have the time. There is, but I think we can understand it even without the text now for our sake. When are you going to feel satisfied with yourself as someone who studied text when you interpret the text? When will you feel? I think for Spinoza, that's when you will be convinced that you have succeeded to find the meanings of what the prophecy is. Not the truth, but the meaning. That is the moment that you are going to be, as someone who studies the text. But it's not so simple, and that's the moment of modernity of Spinoza. Because now I take the literal sense system, and now I don't have time again to analyze it. It's a long analysis. But the literal sense analysis, somehow at the end, if you ask now, where does it happen? Where does the prophecy appears? And the more you read Spinoza, the more you will be convinced that the modern reader has to bring his mind as the space where it happens. That will be the space that you will have to identify. The space of the reader, the mind of the reader. You will have to, and it's so much so that I think that at some point for Spinoza, the first time that prophecy came into full meaning was in the mind of Spinoza. only after you do the critical reading and you take away all of this nonsense from the book and all of that, and you clean it and you let this moment of meaning comes in purity, then you understand prophecy. Now, the prophet himself couldn't clean it. Prophets felt like Joshua really believed in the sun, and he didn't know what's the difference between the sun and the prophecy. That's the fact that the sun is there. It's not really the prophecy, but Joshua was, as Spinoza says, he was just like he was like Ariel Sharon. He was a general, as Spinoza says. He was not like a philosopher. He was not like a very interesting prophet. He was like, for Spinoza, he was like a general, and you don't expect him really to know to read the metaphysics of Aristotle. Yes, it's like so. But in Spinoza, after you clean all the nonsense, you can find there you have the first time the prophecy in pure form, and that can happen only in that. And I'm not going now to discuss the whole thing. This moment is the moment of the subject in the sense the political subject is. This subject is exactly the subject that Spinoza will think is the subject that can obey the law and the subject that can create the law. I'm not going now through the analysis why and so on. It's like a long analysis that we'll have to go. But that I think is the interest of the TTP. That is the way that the TTP will take you to. And this is the modern subject. This subject that knows itself, and the moment where things happen is in he happens in the reading in itself. So I think at some point the point of Spinoza's reading will have to happen in every good citizen of every good citizen will have to read the Bible and to happen to bring the prophecy. Forget now about the prophecy for a moment. Judith, did you want to ask something? Yes, please.
With regard to the term meaning, the meaning comes into existence only with the person who asks about the meaning and looks for it into the text, or is there an absolute meaning of the text that you can take out that, so to speak, exists?
Yeah.
Not related to a specific community who looks into the meaning of the text. And the second thing is, if this happens only with the person now that looks into the text, is this was there no meaning earlier? And if so, is this would you deny, or would Spinoza deny, a historical understanding of perhaps changing subjects, or was it clear?
Yeah. So I can answer about Spinoza and I can answer about Inca. I try to be now, okay. I don't want to say exactly what Spinoza says because that's without analysis, further analysis, I don't think it will give a very good picture. Let's speak about me, okay? I'm now the child. You can say that I said the nonsense. You take is there historical meaning or is there historical difference? What I'm trying to say is like who, for meaning, for that kind of meaning of the literal sense where you have to describe this, someone has to contribute. I put it in a moment in a very strange, not inaccurate language. Someone has to contribute this possibility of to thinking the now where things happened. The mind and the world should stand in such a way that there is a meaning. That's what you achieve in reading a text in this way of the literal sense. But there is a mind, and there is and you are somehow take away all the destruction that were added in history. So history is like something that's a historian is someone that kills history. It's someone that shows you, and look, really, what is it to go to a good historical class? It's a terrible thing. It's you go to you sit the historian, and the historian somehow brings to life whatever, even if it doesn't bring to life the text, he brings the life in the sense that he creates some kind of present where you can have text meaningful in relation to reality, to being. That's what he will do, right? A good historian. And that is the disaster here, because that's which, okay, forget about the disaster for a second. Let's go before the disaster. I mean, after the Tisha B'Av, but before the next disaster. And it's, if you, so for your question, I can answer in either way, because the question will be, it doesn't matter really if there will be different histories and different narratives, and it's not true that there is only one interpretation of all of that doesn't matter to the way that you depict this relation of meaning to being, to the world, to reality. Forget about being for a second, reality. And it will be always in this way that you are trying to indicate some kind of moment where there is meaning in terms of the presence of the world to you. That you don't have anything that stands between them, that it's not related, that you kill the future and you kill the past, and they both stand at that strength. Okay. Now back to Reb Chaim, okay? I'm trying now so partly the project in that, you see the different aspects of this thing of understanding what is hermeneutics in that sense. Hermeneutic is the other way, and in Spinoza, and I tried in different aspects to investigate the very political, concrete moment of the colonialism and Europe, and how much the Bible, as critical Bible, not as the Bible that is not the Bible that you can blame these Dutch Christian missionaries and so on that go to South America, go to India and so on and try to convert. The critical reading of the Bible, Spinoza, how much is that related to the fact that you can have understanding of the world in a colonial way, you can distinguish between Europe and the rest, you can, and all of that. I'm not getting into it, I'm just trying to show that there is a moment here that's exactly related to this understanding of where that is related to the question of hermeneutics and the question of this one plane which we call present at that moment. Present or now, yeah.
I don't know the question, but so I'm just trying to now, and I suppose this is what you're about to do now, make the bridge between Spinoza and Soloveitchik.
Yes. Yeah. Let me now go to that. One of the things I think, and that you see also in the literal sense method of Spinoza, one of the things is that you try to clean the conceptualized world of the conceptual field of that moment as historians, as logician or whatever that, and to find, when you read a text, to find a concept, to make sense of that, to have meaning of that, to have meaning in the sense that this concept can play really. I can take it from one place to another. I don't want a concept that is like a dead concept. I want to see how the concept works. And you try to show me that in different texts. And you shall show me how you take one concept and you move from one text to the other and what happens to the concept. But there is a concept there. And we have beliefs in that, even if we don't, even if we say that. And I now try to investigate this very central concept that's the central concept that we play with. How do we do it? And I say, let's go for, and that's the moment that Soloveitchik is for me. So one of the things that Soloveitchik contributes is exactly here. And it's like what we do is we try to clean the main concept that we are using. That's we do as a philosophers, thinkers, as critical thinkers, the whole time. We say, okay, let me give you the real concept that will work here and works here. That can work in both places. And we do it already with kids. As I said, look, what is a chair? So the kid says, a chair is that with the green back. And I said, oh, so what you have in your room is not a chair because it's not green. And no, I didn't mean green. Green is only accident. I will try further, right? And that's we are imposing on our kids, imposing ourselves this kind of thing. But the point is that I think behind that stands a very deep hermeneutical practice of which is based in having the whole time is this one, that this concept is one. That really there is concept of a chair, which if we clean enough, we'll get there. And then we will have it, the chair works in all other contexts in the world. Yeah? The world is one and everything works because the chair is, the concept of the chair is one. And that's what we do as people who deal with text. Think what you do when you first get the text, Talmudic text. You try to look for the first to the moment and to try to clean this concept and to understand it and to define it. And I think, look now about what Soloveitchik does. And I think this, in that terms, is important to this whole story that I told. He's taking a concept, he's taking a text in general, taking a text basically of Maimonides. Begin with that. Maimonides is a very clear writer. On the one hand, on the other hand, okay, without the other hand, no. And what we do in general as in interpretation, we'll try to explain how Maimonides understood this concept, and therefore said, in this case like that, and in this case like that. And how we do it, we say, okay, first let's see what Maimonides studied. He knew Mishnah, he knew Talmud, and so on. How does it appear in the Mishnah? What Maimonides did with this concept in the Mishnah, and how he understood it, yes? And what does it mean, how he understood it? How he understood it means that I can somehow put a certain way of, as if there is a meaning, that I can attach to the concept, and it's like playing the whole place as the same now. I can do this game, but this game, says Soloveitchik, is assuming that the concept is one. There is some oneness to our concept. And I think what Soloveitchik does each time is going, okay, let's go first round and go with this Maimonides text and try to make sense of that. And then it breaks down. And then because there are different texts and different concepts, you cannot locate them together. And then there's another one. But I think we all do it the whole time. That's what we do, in this way or that way. Yes, perhaps that's how we do. That is the basic of critical work, or the basic of yeah. And then he comes to a point, I think, when he tries to show this text of the Rambam, which is a good text for many reasons. It's basically all the texts of the Yad Chazaka are junctional texts, I would say now in this way. Junctional in the sense that for us, and again, that is important, because anyone who tried ever to reconstruct Maimonides into why he decided something like that, know that it's almost impossible. First, it doesn't seem like, sometimes it's Yerushalmi, sometimes he decides according to Midrash, sometimes it's, but what is junctional, I mean, Maimonides had many different texts of him, and somehow these concepts comes together into a very formulated halakha. And there you have to have hard time to find out what was there, what is actually pressing there, what is the one that he's using. And I think almost when you begin to read, Maimonides in the rabbinic, in the longest way. So you see that almost every halakha of Maimonides doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense first because, yeah, it's written beautifully and so, but when you try to figure out why, it's a junction of many different texts that's clash together, and you don't know how to put it together. But it's there, and that's the point. I think that's it's so important. It makes sense. It is a text, very clear text, and you have to find out how it comes together. And I think what Soloveitchik is trying to do, because it's such a junctional text, that's a text, all of this clashes, that it's a good text in order to see exactly this point, that you can trace back the different texts, but you cannot make, even if you can, that's the point I think here, even if you can tell a story which will end up in one concept, you miss the point because you miss the point because it's possible otherwise. Because and I think that's what he's trying to show. Take the text and see what you have here is a concept, and try to see if this concept is really has to be one thing, or perhaps it's more than perhaps it's one in a different way than what we are used to, and it's different from the way that we are used to. And Soloveitchik says that is the Tzvei Dinim. I will show you that it's just look at the text that we read, look carefully, and you see that actually the concept is not one. There are two things there. But it's not to say that there are two concepts. It's not to say that there are two understanding of the concept. It's not to say that sometimes the concept is like that, and in other cases the concept. It says just look. It's not one thing. It's like, and I think that was the example of the Matzah Shmura with the Hefza and so. So just think about what he says, and I think let's talk again about the Adidas. I really have to get some money from Adidas for all of this.
Why are you still talking about Matzah?
Because I think I will talk about Matzah Shmura in a second. Because I think Matzah Shmura, you have so many halachot around it that it's more. Adidas is more. It's clear in a way that it's unclear. Because indeed, I think the point is we have this concept of Adidas, and when you look at it, it's not like you say, okay, it's like. You can say, and it will be true. You can say it has this number of lines, and it and it has this kind of feeling on my leg, and so on and so forth. But you also understand that there is, I mean, that the Adidas is something else. It's there. That's what he's trying to convince. I think that there is a moment where you have to have the texts. That's all of this description as part of the thing, which is not as the first thing. So there are what you have here as the concept of Adidas, or as Adidas, or the object itself, is like something that is not one, and it's not like. You see the problem of social construction, for instance. Social construction is push it to the immaterial in a way understanding of the world, but it's but it's not. It's part of the world, and part of the world is that include the story of the thing. It's in a way, I mean, again, it's like. It's in a way the problematic that Marx felt so strongly with the concept of the fetish of the money, or that you can never really bring out the history of that, but it's there. The blood of the worker are inside. Yes.
So does this then? So the concept is more than just one thing. Is this whatever is included in the concept from what you're saying? And from the example of the Adidas shoe, it seems to be something not tangible. And I wonder now, like what this, I mean, my association to this is the spirit and the letter.
Yeah, but that's exactly not, from my perspective, is exactly the opposite, because it is exactly what I think he's trying to say. This is the object. It's tangible. What you're touching is Adidas.
Yeah.
You are touching it. It's not like you're touching a leather, and the leather has the name of Adidas somewhere in the city hall registration patent. You are touching Adidas. You are walking in Adidas. You are living with Adidas. You are whatever. Yes.
And how does this then relate to the way Spinoza thinks about prophecy?
Okay. Yes. It's not related necessarily directly, but I brought Spinoza prophecy is to show this a whole way that you build this concept of meaning in modernity. Okay, and part of it, and I try to bring the concept of the presence and the concept where something appears as something that you can analyze it as one and all of these things. And with Soloveitchik, I'm only attacking one aspect. Now, yeah, the Zweidin only attacks one thing, and it is the hermeneutical work, the scholarly work, whatever you want to call it, of identifying this concept that can explain all other texts. And where he comes to the point and say, but you have to turn upside down the whole world. You have to understand that what comes, it's not like there is I don't want to say it's not like, before we come to the Zweidin, you are trying to focus on the thing and to say what it is and what is the concept and so on. And after the Zweidin, you try to look on this text and to say, where I can see these places, yeah, where shows that's what I take to be a concept, because I already have the concept. What I take to be concept is never one. That's what I will do. That's what the work of the text will be. The text will be, the hermeneutical work in that sense will be an obstacle in the way of killing the text as meaningful without a text, like the main hermeneutical way, like to say, I will reduce the text to claims, to meaning, to and so on, and I will correct all the mistakes in the text. I will change the wrong versions. I will, and so on. And but the end, what you try to do, and that is another thing that I'm trying to just in order to see how much we are slaves. We are critical thinkers. Are slaves of certain metaphysics. So one of the things is like, and that's even, I think, at least one of the places, like for instance, I think Derrida is failing with his brilliant difference, which is also related to that issues. Yes, it's not like unrelated. But I think also Derrida, when you think entirely about the whole differ and so on, what he comes to the point where the unit of what gives meaning and takes meaning is the proposition, is the sentence, not the text, right? Although he begins with, although the whole thing goes through the grammatology, yes, but the grammatology disappears in difference at the moment that he tries to analyze the meaning of time, which again, I don't get into it now, but he's also dealing the whole time in the background with Heidegger, but with the question of this now and difference and so on. But forget about it. I just say it without explaining, so it's not like, but what you can see in Derrida when you read is that what is the first unit of analysis that's at the end you have with the difference, and I think it is the sentence. It will be the unit of meaning will be the sentence or the proposition, whatever you want to call it. Exactly the opposite of what I say, yeah. As Elchanan would say, that I am the smallest of all small, say in contrast to Derrida. Or not in contrast, I'm trying to see where Derrida fails, where he falls himself in that. And I say, when you read a text, what your text to take a text and to take the meaning of the unit of meaning into a sentence is already to give yourself to give in to philosophy of language, to linguistic, and to give the text and say the text is just reducible. The text that I hear in front of me, that thing, is reducible. The text is not meaningful by itself. It's meaningful by being sentences. It's meaningful by that, and I can go back to that. But the point of the real hermeneutics work, and I think that's what you can at least see, I think, with Soloveitchik's Vedidium, is that the unit is not a sentence, the unit is not a concept, the unit is that thing which is brought together into in a certain kind of arbitrary way. We have no arbitrary way of the text. It comes to the world as arbitrary as the text is. But this is the unity of our concept.
But so then, is there anything to talk about?
Well, look how long I'm talking, the whole life.
I know, but now that we get to this point, what is so Soloveitchik did all this, he broke it apart and all this to show that you can't, I don't know if this is correct, but I'm saying, but you can't find meaning in all these separate pieces. Just to show that the concept is convergence of more than one thing. What do we do with this thing?
Yes. Well, I mean, first, if you ask me this question, it's good because I think that is one of the questions. First, it was asked about Soloveitchik itself. I think many people think that in some ways there is an issue with his, something is like, okay, so what do I do now? But that's also many people, I think many people who first read Derrida, I think, have, or read it for the first several times, have this feeling. Yeah, what do I do? Okay, so we did constructed the American Declaration of Independence. Okay, so what do I do now? Derrida or whatever. And I don't want to answer the question entirely. I just wanted to say, of course.
Just open up
Of course, it opened up. I mean, we will find something to do. You are academics. You have to do something. But seriously, I think it's opened up entirely the whole dimension, because if you goes first, you have like completely many texts to read and to open up into now understanding. That's what you do. I mean, as a reader, you try to find the dirtiness of the text, not the cleanness of it. And you try to read the cleanness of the dirt, and then you have, I mean, that's what I do, okay? I try to read the cleanness of the theological, political treatise of Spinoza, not the ethics. But to read it the way that is clean, and to show how this cleanness is part of a certain kind of order of oppression, which when you see the dirtiness of the text, so to speak, you can see what you don't see otherwise. I mean, how can you find the way? Okay, so that is what I mean. Okay, this is more like slogans now, but I think those who were my Spinoza's reading of so that, for instance, the way that in order to see that how much this secular Bible is actually a basis of colonial order of the world. Yeah? This is something that you have to read, but you see the moment that, yeah.
So that's for you, that's the cleanliness of the text. It's the colonial order of the world.
No, but it's like one of the things that I can, this reading enables. The moment that you accept that a concept is yes.
Several questions, and there are around the like I think they don't get the comparison between Spinoza and Soloveitchik. Spinoza is semi-political because of his text
Yeah.
So he wanted to do something with his reading, whereas Soloveitchik didn't want to do anything. He will say, he will tell you, I don't want you to take my reading and change anything in your behavior. So this is one. And then Spinoza is reading this text, that the Bible, assuming that this text is corrupted and to some extent is right, and Soloveitchik reads his text, assuming this text is wonderful and has no flaws, and to some sense, in some sense is right as well. And Spinoza aims at deconstructing his text, while Soloveitchik is in reconstructing. It's like we find a problem and then try to fix this problem. So working.
Yeah. Well, to the first part of your question, I agree. Say something. To the second part, I entirely disagree. Let me begin with the disagreement, because that's what's more enjoyable. To the contrary, I think that Spinoza is trying to reconstruct the text of the Bible to the right way, in contrast to the Catholic and the Jews. But he will come back to the point where he reconstructs the biblical text to the real meaning, and then you will see that is, and then it's the right. Whereas Soloveitchik is entirely the contrary. What he's doing, he's trying to deconstruct.
Anyway, they're not doing the same thing.
No, I mean, but the opposite way in that sense. Soloveitchik is trying to come to the point where you cannot reconstruct the text. That's the point. You cannot reconstruct this thing that will be. Well, if you have different text, you can show the moment you can see that's how a concept become like so significant in playing the different games, because it is not because it's not unified, because it's a unity which is double or dual or whatever. As to the fourth point, Spinoza is very political in his intention, but I think also the same way, and that's his way that I try to read Spinoza. That's exactly the moments where we all believe, that is the thing. There are certain things that we really believe that's literal. I mean, I can say about myself, which I despise it. I think it's wrong, and I still, when I walk, I think like all of modern. I think that literal sense is the first meaning of a text. Then you can do many other things, which is entirely wrong, I think. But I walk like that, right? The first thing that I do is like to look for the literal sense of the text and doing it historically or whatever, critically also. But I'm trying exactly to understand this metaphysics that I'm hiding behind, and I'm servant of it. And Soloveitchik was a very political person in many senses. I mentioned his anti-Zionism, which was extremely strong and radical, and even he had a very interesting. You see, it's here and there because he never gave a whole treatise on that. But for instance, he was objected even to the idea of the Orthodox Jews to go together. And he thought that in that sense, I think he understood the meaning of community in Lithuania and Poland and the independence of, and he insisted that every community has to be independent, that you cannot have a Buddha which will put all the communities together. He saw that he gave them this kind of mashal that he says, that was a new thing, I guess. He says, look about all of these houses where they have like a candle that lights the house, and if the candle is broken in one house, there is still light in the other house. But when you have like electricity power, if it's broken, all of you are going to sit in darkness. And he said that is exactly what that Jews should not be, communities should not look like that. We should not look like a central rabbinate in that sense. Each community has to build some kind of its own power. So he had many political things, but I agree now, totally agree that if you ask him, this is political, if you crazy, what is that? But I'm saying I don't owe Soloveitchik that. I mean, I can use him in order to understand what is text, in order to understand what is Spinoza text. That's I do. Yeah. He doesn't have to understand it as political. I understand it as political. I understand the whole project of changing, of challenging this literal sense Protestant understanding of text, which comes with a certain as a central political thing. I don't think that Soloveitchik ever. I don't have any reason that it's central, and I don't care even because it's.
But it's just as modern, right?
Hmm?
But it is just as modern.
Soloveitchik. Yes, of course, we are all.
The same distancing that characterizes the modern.
It's different. I think the difference is that he didn't need. I mean, it's impossible if you follow the logic of this Sveidinim, then it's impossible to say the text is not like in one place, in one time, in one moment. That is exactly not what you check. You discuss different text. You never work with one text, so there is not this moment of. In each text, it appears, and it's the faith or the fate of a concept is to be different in different places, not because it changes, yeah, and it was one here and now it's one other, but because the concept is not one. So in that sense, it's not like the modern understanding of concept, but it's modern in the sense that it's modern. I mean, yeah, it's not like
still reflective. It still means a second look, which
in that sense.
In that sense, that you can't be naive.
Yeah, but the reflective is not necessary. I mean, okay, this is a long discussion now, but I think the reflective becomes, in what I would call modern, the reflective is when you have to assume for that a certain kind of subject, which the whole meaning of subjectivity, yeah? And I think Spinoza is the wonderful example of that. Spinoza of the TTP, and Spinoza as the ethics is exactly the opposite. But Spinoza of the TTP is exactly that. You have this reader, you have this critical reader, you have this critical reader which actually there happens, etc., etc. You have all the stages of subjectivity, and this is the good citizen that Spinoza has in mind as the what thing. But you can have reflective or a way of reflection without not necessarily by assuming by being committed to this full understanding of subjectivity. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not like reflexiveness in the full sense of subjectivity is modern, I think, but reflexivity without in different ways also possible, I think. Yeah.
So when you say that Spinoza does exactly the opposite from Soloveitchik, he also, I mean, in his time, I don't know, the university already existed, right? Leiden and Heidelberg were already there. So he is familiar with the practices of the university of the practices of thinking and studying and analyzing. Because what I'm trying to say is he then applies these different, I know that there's this whole discussion about how the sun in the prophecy, right? The sun
yes.
would not have possibly been, like it must have been an eclipse. So he draws on natural sciences to prove that certain prophecy or what was happening around this moment of prophesizing was not anything special at all, but just nature. So, do I understand you correctly that he applies all these arguments, all these I don't know, evidences in order to dismantle an existing understanding of the Bible, in order to come to this single thing, single way of understanding it, which is his way, of course. And then the concept, which we were talking about before, in his mind, the concept, what he's after is some kind of a unity.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why it's also in opposition to Soloveitchik, because Soloveitchik leaves it be, he says the concept is not just one thing, it's more. And Spinoza actually after coming to that single thing.
Right. Yeah, okay, yes. And let me just but add a few things. It's like Spinoza is, of course, well, Spinoza actually, in that sense, is authority. Is not. It doesn't need academia comes to listen to him, and that's issues of optics, because he's like one of the experts on optics in the world, and he knows the physics, and there is the whole correspondence around Leibniz and others, which are interested what Spinoza is doing there and what is a new achievement, and they are like very curious to know about his optical thing. But yes, he applies the knowledge of optics and soul to this case of Joshua, for instance. Under the principle first that he doesn't need to, he uses it in order to understand the mind of the prophets, not the fact that there was no miracle, there is no question. Yes, that is, he says for that. But he wants to understand what the prophet had in mind. And for that, he uses optics and he uses the beliefs. Yeah, why the prophets believed in something like that, and why and what he actually saw, and what is the meaning of prophecy are different things. And he tries to analyze each of them and to find and to put it in place. But then again, what will be to understand the mind of the prophet? Yeah, to understand the mind of the prophet will be exactly that, putting on one level. And the level is the level of the now that you find all of them, the level of time, the level of the present. That's this happening, this event, and the mind of the prophet Joshua and the contemporary physics and everything else have to be on the same plane. That will be the meaning. This is the way to get to the meaning. When you have that, you will get the meaning. The meaning will come to you. Yes, but right. I wanted to go on to reading, and then what's the time? Yeah. Till when we have?
Like half an hour.
I'm just trying to think how to, because what I had in mind is like, okay, let's just finish the text, because, which is not finishing, because the text is just finished in the first moment. And that's also, I think, typical. Let's finish it and then see if we have the finish. So let's read from the moment that he begins with the problem, the last problem, and the Tzveidinim, and finishing the. If anyone can read today, אכן יש לדקדק.
אכן יש לדקדק עוד בדברי הרמב"ם, במה שכתב הטעם לפי שאינה משומרת על שם הצע, ואם כן, הנמצא בהד פטורה מן החלה, בהד אין אדם יוצא בה ידי חובתו בפסח, שני דינים נפרדים ושני טעמים חלוקים הם.
That's what I mentioned. Now you understand more why I insisted so much that it's not Tzveidinim, because he says that is two different things. And that's the point that Tzveidinim, that is not two different things, it's one thing.
Yes.
So that is a wrong.
שני דינים נפרדים.
Yeah, so that is wrong. That is just bad editing. Like you should not use the שני דינים נפרדים.
Because you know 3 lines later, שני דינים.
Yeah, but I think it's like exactly. Yeah, but it's a bad editing for real. Yeah, it's not very friendly. Let's say. Okay.
ואילו בפירוש המשניות כתב, דהד אינו יוצא בה ידי חובה, ומשום דכל שאינו חייב בחלה, אינו יוצא בה ידי חובה, וצריך חיוב.
Yeah. So this is the last problem, and the problem that I said yesterday, that it's not such a strong problem for anyone who is used with pilpul and terotzim. Like they are much worse. This kushia is not so strong. It's like that's the Maimonides in the Purush HaMishnayot. Indeed, as we saw, means that chala, that's the portion, is like having to be. That's the matzah is based in Purush HaMishnayot on chala, and that's you have the shmartem in the Yad Chazaka. And it looks like entirely different things, like no connection. Okay, go.
ונראה לומר בזה, הנה בעיקר דין במשמרת לשם מצה, תרי דין יש בזה. חדה, עצם מעשה השימור שצריך לשמרה מחימוס, שזהו עיקר מצוות שימור. ועוד, יש בדין דאחפצה שיחול בה משומרת לשם מצה.
Yeah, שיחול משומרת לשם מצה. Now, see how it says, עיקר מצוות שימור. Like, what do you have to do in order to do shmir? You have to do shmir. That's what you have to do. Yeah, that is עיקר מצוות שימור. But now there is something else, which is somehow entirely independent from, that is exactly the miraculous moment of the object. That's and that is the moment where you say, the od, yes, but what is matzah shmura? What is the shmirat matzah? That's something, as we talked about long, so I will not repeat that now. דין בהחפצה שיחול בשם משומרת לשם מצה. אוקיי. וכדאית בפסוחים,
כדאית בפסוחים דווקא מתחד, יכול לייצא ידי חובה בחלות תודה ובקיקי נזיר. ואנו לומר, ושמרתם את המצות. מצה משתמרת לשם מצה. אצתה זו שאינה משתמרת לשם מצה, אלא לשם זרע.
Okay. Now, as I said yesterday, or the day before, I don't remember, that we have to remember that matzah is not only for Passover. Yeah, there's matzah in the Mikdash. And now there is this question in Masechet in Pesuchim that says, Chalot Todah, which is Chalot here is Chalot. It's not like, it's not Chala, like portion, it's like a loaf. Or Chalot Todah, that's for Korban. Refikei Nazir, it's also for one of the things that you bring. They both have to be without chametz. They are matzah, or you can consider be matzah. Can I use them? Let's say that I'm Kohen or whatever. Can I use them in order to eat on the first night of Passover, for matzah of Passover? And they say, Talmud lomar, ושמרתם את המצות. That is written on Passover. שמרתם את המצות. Now, מצה המשתמרת לשם מצה, היא עתה זו שאינה משתמרת לשם מצה, אלא לשום זבח. So, that is the drasha there. Yeah? That's, you cannot actually eat מצה that is used for korban, חלות תודה, etc. Because you don't do the guarding for the matzah, you do you don't do the guarding for the matzah. No, that's for l'shem matzah. For the guarding for the matzah. Now I say here again l'shem matzah because there are, I don't know if there are many discussions here again. What is l'shem matzah? because is the Shem Matzah just like for the sake of Matzah, or really does it have to go to follow the whole Talmudic discussion, for instance, of get? Get, that's the act of separation, that you bring the get, it has to be written for the sake, for the name, for the sake of the specific person that you write it. There are several things like that. And there it's a very complicated issue right now, but it's much more like for the name of that person. I have to write it. I have to really have in mind this person when I write their name. I cannot write get for my dog and saying Seamus, but think about Seamus, the Irish name, yeah? It's the same name, etc., but it will be a different person, so it's not for his name. So that is the get. Now, I'm mentioning it because I think partly, okay, all of that, at some point, like for instance, the Minchas Chinuch and others begin to have this discussion if the L'Shem Matzah, Nishma or L'Shem Matzah Shmua or L'Shem Matzah has to be, he has the same status of the Shema of Get, Lishma, or it's a different thing, like something else. Leave it aside, but okay. But what does it, okay, Itamar, if you can read.
Yes, of course. הרי לאף יש כאן מעשה שיעור גמור שיוכל להוביל גם לעניין מצא, אבל מכל מקום, כיוון דמשתמרת לשם דבר אחר, אינה בכלל משומרת לשם מצא. ועל כורחה, והווה דין והחפצה שיחול בה משומרת לשם מצא, ועל כן כל שנעשה לשם דבר אחר, לא חלה בה שם דמשומרת לשם מצא.
Yes. Now, I think here he's trying to show one of the implication of his understanding of the Tzvei Dinim. Why he adds this second din of what happens, what apply to the Hefza of the name that is applied to it. Look what happens there in the Talmud Pesachim. That's if you do it for Zevach, if you do it for the Korban, if you do it for other things, then what you get is something, no, he says, what is the issue? You do the same thing. You did the Shmirah, the same thing. It cannot be Chametz. It cannot be, and basically, there is no distinction between what you did here and what you did here. Yeah? The only difference is that here, it becomes Matzah Shmua, and here it is not, because you don't shomer it for the sake of Matzah. So this is the case like, yeah, so that is the one. If he's okay, any comments or you want? Yeah.
So why, like this phrase, when the can we just say another reason? The meaning you have while you react.
The what?
The meaning you have while you react. Like he's saying, there are two meanings for Rambam. One is Lishmo al Matzah, and the other to have the meaning while Lishmo al Matzah.
In the Rambam, there is no two meanings. There are two aspects. Yeah, that's
but he's like explaining like we have two things, and the second thing is just the meaning while doing an action.
But what do you mean?
Another meaning,
okay. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Intention.
Yes, I understand. And I think your question is exactly the very good question. I think I perhaps I can answer in the way of people, but I don't want. I insist here exactly, and it's stronger even from what he says in a way, because each time that sometimes someone says "Ube'al kochach," yeah, like Elchanan says, like each time that someone says I didn't say any chiddush, so each time that a lamdan says "Ube'al kochach," it's very suspicious. Yeah, Be'al kochach, I can always find a way out of that. For instance, what you said now. Yeah. Like, why do I need the whole Hefza, Meshumer, etc.? Just what I need is that will be another I think perhaps it's possible to answer that in a more simple way, but but I insist now to try to go with me with the play at the moment and to say, but let's see if actually, why do you want to answer that in this way? Because originally you think that this is the right way to do. Now, to say, okay, I will find, I don't need something new like his view. I can do it in the classical way. I can, that will do any, I mean, there are, I think also one of, I don't remember who, but someone who says exactly that. One of the interpreters of Maimonides. Not against Reb Chaim, just because he explained exactly that you need, and I think, not because you are against Chadash, yeah, but because, and I think to play the play is like, let's say that I cannot convince you that there is a textual reason to accept that way and not your way, because your way is fine. But why, or not why, let's try for a moment to look at what he says. And he says, what you do, you miss the whole aspect of what happens to matzah. You just like try again to tell me something without looking, without getting into the point that matzah shmua is this complicated concept. That he says my explanation is in this way, not prior, but it doesn't have to be. I don't have to take yours to say it's prior in the logic of explaining a text than mine.
I just think like what I have is I'm not criticizing him, I'm criticizing you. Like
all the best. I mean, all the best.
Could we understand him that way? That he just say there are two reasons or two explanations. One is to Lishmo that, and the other one is intentional.
No, I mean that's you can say, but I don't think then I mean if you know the language of Reb Chaim, then is it because why then he does all of these crazy comments, all of these crazy terms, Bal Kochach, Matzah, Bechefza, etc. Just say it like you said it beautifully. In this Matzah, I need Kavanah. That's it. We know how to use that.
Because this is like it's like in law. When you have a psak,
yeah,
you normally bring shilshul and then you say.
Yeah, no, but Be'al Korchach, he means exactly that. He means Be'al Korchach use this explanation of mine, not mine, his, that there is Hefza, Shem, V'chulei. He names that, not, yeah? Why do you need this whole thing? Why do you need Hefza? I mean, if I accept your thing, I don't see why does he say what he says?
I'm asking whether we can say that this phrase, Sheyachol B'Shem, that is a way to say that there will be the right intention.
You can, I mean, to say
like
you can.
The Shem is the intention.
No, Shem is not intention, but okay, if you know, I mean.
Because I will call you Oded, while my intention is to call Oded.
Yeah, but that is okay. Let me say it in authoritative way because we don't have the time. This is the language that he introduces. It doesn't exist, this language, in the rabbinical. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. That is a new thing in the world of Lamdanut. Yeah. And I think he is insisted, he uses Ba'al Korchach, especially that. He says, if you have to understand it in this way that I am bringing. I'm trying to say what is this way, yes? You don't have to agree with me with that, but I think for definitely, if you know the text of Reb Chaim, you know that's what he means, Ba'al Korchach here, is exactly to say, no, it will not be Kavanah.
Okay, maybe, what is Ba'al Korchach in this dictionary?
Ba'al Korchach, it means that something like, okay, and now you have to, you must concede that I am that I'm having the right explanation. You must concede to me, you must yield, you must, And why? And that's what I said. There is no reason to not to accept what you said. And I think that I forgot now who it was, but one of the people, the late, not people, now what we call people, not what we talk about. We call people like in the 18th or 19th century. Like someone who just read text in complicated way, and he comes to that the point that says that it's kavanah. That's what you need. And no, he doesn't read him. He read the Maimonides and he read the text. And I'm not even sure also if Chaim knew this text. I don't remember what it is. It's not like a very central. But I think he's exactly trying to say, no, don't go there. Don't go to add another condition on that. Just see. What happens there? It's a very simple thing. He says, this is Matzah Meshumeret L'Shem. That's what the Talmud, the Psochim says, right? That's Matzah Meshumeret L'Shem Matzah, Ela L'Shum Zevach. So the Shimur was exactly this. Now, the point is that you can look at it as kavanah, but, and especially here, I mean, if you read the text, yeah, because kavanah is also something that we add to text. It's also a logic. It's not like simple thing that's. Look at the text here. Matzah המשתמרת לשם מצה, יצאה זו המשתמרת לשם זבח. Now there is no mentioning of kavanah, right? There is no mentioning of what you have to do. It is matzah. You get.
You have l'shem.
Yeah, but l'shem, that is what you do for the sake. Yeah. L'shem here.
For the sake, it's also kavanah. And it also means kavanah.
But kavanah is part of the thing. It's not. Of course, there is kavanah, no doubt. I mean, I don't know if to call it kavanah, but there is something on your mind. And I said, I mentioned that he's already putting us this trap that he speaks about what I have on my mind, and he doesn't speak about kavanah. You remember yesterday, but here, just read the kind of Tanaic text that's there, and then the Talmud. Matzah mishtameret l'shem matzah, yatzah mishtameret. There is no says that he has to. There is no language like that. The only thing is like matzah mishtameret l'shem matzah is matzah shmura. Matzah mishtameret l'shem zevach. You cannot do it because it's not matzah shmura for Pesach. Yeah, it's not matzah shmura. That's the point. I think he is like trying to tell you you can read the text without bringing in all these halachic constructions, and just understanding that the main point here is that's like the Artzveidim in the thing. The concept of matzah shmura is something different from what you have. It is not different. You have it also, but it's something more. You have to take it further in a way that you analyze it. If you take the concept itself, then you have matzah shmura mishtameret l'shem zevach without any addition. You don't have to add anything.
And are there other examples that he uses?
Other examples he uses?
Yeah.
The whole book.
The whole book.
Yeah. I mean, not
That
every.
would be very.
That's he. Yes. He doesn't do it in every case, but there are countless places that he uses tzveidim. That is, and also we have like countless places that we don't have in the text, but we know that students who report or things like that's used. He never explained what it is. Yes, that's one of the things. But that is the main hermeneutical thing that he introduces as something that never existed before, without explaining anything. Okay, let's finish.
ולפי זה נראה, וגם בעיסת הכלבים בכבודה, אם באנו לדון משום עצם מעשה השימור, באמת לא יש בזה שום גריעותא במה שנעשה על דבר אכילת כלבים, או דרך אכילת כלבים. ומכל מקום, כל שנשמרה כראוי מחימוץ, שפיר היה חשוב זה לשימור גמור, והייתה בכלל משומרת. ואף בכיוון דהה בדינה, בכל אכילת כלבים לט בשרצה, על כן, משום זה, הוא דחזר דינה לכל שנעשית לשם אכילת כלבים, לא מועיל בה השימוש שהיה בה אז למי חלבה והחפצה שמשומרת לשם מצה, ומועיל זאת לפוסלה לעולם אף כשחל בה אחר כך שם מצה על ידי מחשבתו לאכילה, כיוון לשם משומרת לשם מצה שצריך לחול בה בשעת עשייה, לטבה.
Yeah. So if you remember his discussion, when does lechem and so on, he says, Chazar v'chashav, he said, Chazar v'chashav, if someone rethink the status, then he says, according to Maimonides, that's what he says, I don't have to assume that it's not lechem. It can be lechem, but still it won't be matzah. You don't have to assume that it won't be lechem because I rethought. But then he explained that there are the times that you have to do, we follow the different times that you have to do isa and matzah and so on. And now he says, the shmirah was absolutely fine of the Isat HaKlavim in the sense of, but there was not this process of the name appearance, the name integration within the product didn't happen because it was for dogs. Yeah. So that was and he says, but there is a moment, as we saw, there is a moment when the name can be applied for a dog. That is if it happens at certain point, let's say before Afiyah, never mind now this issue, then after that, like Chala, it cannot happen. So despite the fact that now it is Lechem, and but the name cannot appear later. The name of the thing appears within a certain process where this happens according to certain regulations, and et cetera, et cetera. So it didn't happen. So now, okay, Tamar, if you can read.
ולפי זה, הנמצא דהה דעיסת הכלבים, בזמן שאין הרואים אוכלים ממנה האביה אינה משומרת או משתמרת לשם מצה, יסודה הוא מפני שבשעת עשייתה לא חלה עליה שם מצה. זהו שגורם לה שלא יחול עליה גם דין שימור של מצה. ואם כן, הנמצא לשני הטעמים צריכים להדדה. בטעם דמצה יתקש לחלה, ולעיקר הפוסלה בין מדין מצה ובין מדין שימור. וטעם דאינה משומרת לשם מצה, ולפוסלה לעולם, ולא יועיל מה שחזר וחשב אחר כך לאכילת אדם. ומתאימים דבריו בפירוש המשניות, עם דבריו בהלכות חמץ ומצה, כיוון דתרווה וצריכן להדדה, וכמו שנכתב.
כמו שנתבהר.
נתבהר.
Now, the point I think is now he says, okay, let's go back to Maimonides and let's look what happens in the Perush HaMishnayot. And Perush HaMishnayot is trying to, he gives us the main point of, as we saw, he says, Chala is the main issue. If you don't, and Matzah itkash lechala, and so on and so forth, and it's not like, but it's still, it doesn't, we still miss here something. The something that we miss here is that Chazar v'chashav. Because that is something that he has to explicate in the Ad Chazakah, because there you have to know there you have to bring in the question. In Chala, it's actually what happens. He explains you the logic of it's the same as Chala, it's the same as that, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but then you have this problem, halachic problem of what happens when Chazar v'chashav, and for that you have to name the issue of Meshumeret L'Shem Matzah, because otherwise he can Chazar v'chashav. But if therefore he has to stress it exactly in the Al Chazakah. He doesn't like trying, the both things exist together, as he says in the Tzvei Dinim. There's nothing to, but in the Ad Chazakah, I write an halachic book. I have to tell you what happened when, if it's, why it is always true. In Perush HaMishnayot, I explain you the logic of why it is like Chala. and like Shmua, etc. But I don't have there to explain you what happens when Chazar v'Chashav. Right? It's like, look, I mean, if it's convincing or not, it's a question. I mean, you don't have to accept it, of course. But I think what I find interesting is, again, that he says, I have a concept that's I can play with. It's not because there are two concepts here. It's not because he changed his mind. It's not because there is a concept. It's such that it is already in the place of playful concept that I have to, according to the text, I have to explain. If it's a text of Yad Chazaka, I will explain it one way. If that's I will explain it a different way. That's what will decide. That will be the origin of my decision, not the meaning of the concept, because the meaning is already there. I think that is the way that he's trying to play with the concept. In any case, what I wanted to do now is like to go further, because this is actually weak. I wanted to go further to see, to study the sugya of Matzah Shmura, the different sugyot of Matzah Shmura in the Bavli and Yerushalmi, and to see if we can use his insight in order to get into these sugyot, to see if it makes okay. So therefore, I copied these things today for the text. If you see, there are there are different texts that's related to Matzah Shmura. I began with the Bible, but then we see Rambam, and we see Chulin, and we see Ritva, and we see Rashi, and all Yerushalmi, and Sochem Nem, etc., etc. All of these are just some of the texts that you can try to understand the very concept of Matzah Shmura, and to see if you can begin to read like him, if you can try to say that the concept is adapted by the text. Yeah, that's the text is okay. Question, or just that will stop, or
it seems like the really last passage we read now, that's to the matter of the name. The name, which I read as perhaps intention, doesn't matter. But he does give to it priority over the Shimur itself, because he said the Shimur you can play with it, and with the Shem or the intention or whatever, once you did it for something which is not Matzah,
it's over.
It's over.
Yes.
There's no reverse.
Yeah, but it's over again because of text, not because it's real thing in concept. He explained you why, not here. Just a few minutes ago, I mean, yesterday, he explained you that the same as Chala, that it has to be Gilgela, etc. We have in Shmira, we have also the moment that Shmira happens. So it's like, it's not because you cannot really rethink. He says, yes, you can rethink, and it will become lechem. Lechem it will become. And it will be Ra'ui Lemacha Adam. You get everything back in that sense. The only thing that you don't get back is the name. It's like, think about, I mean, let's go back to the Adidas. After it finished the production and it was wrong, it was not product. After I produced it at my home, you cannot change the name. That's the point, because we have this agreement that only Mr. Adidas can put his name on that. Not because of the, So now that is the kind of the textual social agreement. Yeah, the legal, never mind, but for him it's textual. After that, you cannot change the name. It will be the same. I mean, I can tell you, okay, it's a wonderful. Well, I said, yes, it's a wonderful, and I tell you, yes, okay, I even allow you to use it, Mr. Adidas said. You don't have to, fine, I will use it. But it's not Adidas. That's what he's trying to, that's the analogy, yeah? Not entirely fully, but the point is that you can bring back an object to be entirely functional in terms of everything that you want, but it still won't have the name, so the object is not that object. I will never be able to take the fake Van Gogh that I did and make it into Van Gogh. Although you'll have all the qualities that you want. And although even if I let you put it in your museum, the fake Van Gogh.
But it's because while we were doing the Van Gogh, it wasn't with intention.
Because of different, perhaps because of the intention, perhaps because of other things, because the strange, the fetish that we have is that the hand of Van Gogh will be there. Yeah, or what we call the hand of Van Gogh. And if it's not this hand of Van Gogh, it cannot be Van Gogh. Although it's Van Gogh. Yeah, it's what Van Gogh, it's exactly the same. So I think here is that's just there. I tell you, you can go with all of that process back, reversible, except from the name. That you will never be able to go back.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm not entirely like it's Vainina, but actually the name has more.
Yeah, in that sense, yes. Yes.
Almost to the extent that the first thing, which is the Shigon, the plus the production, of course it's important, but it's not the
yeah, but I agree, but that's exactly what I like about, I mean, look how he takes, look how we ended now with what is like the opposite of common sense as the thing that makes sense for us now. Because we began with the thing that's the real thing is that's what it is Van Gogh, what is the Adidas and how you produce it and now we end up with the thing that's yeah, but it doesn't have the name. We are already, I think like you are more on the side now of what we first thought that it's absurd. Oh?
again.
I think now we are in the position, or what you expressed is like what we yesterday thought it's absurd. Yeah, like why it is not Adidas.
The only one.
Okay. So perhaps you are still the only one. Yes. Oh, you did first. Sorry.
With regard to this designation or the branding, as I would call it, there's a difference if you compare the Matzah Shmura with the Van Gogh or with Adidas. Adidas from the very outset, at the first shoe that was produced, it is Matzah Shmura as it has the branding from the very first moment that you call it Adidas. The Van Gogh, when he did the first painting, nobody was interested in this Van Gogh, it is Van Der, it is Van whatever, it is something, it is a painting. No, it is not interesting. It is a Brzezinski, it is
yes.
No matter. It became later a branding and something that you wish to keep following. So it's the Matzah Shmura more the Van Gogh. In the beginning, you had the Matzah, and then you call it Matzah Shmura, and sometimes you so to speak, put in this understanding of guarding, or was it from the very outset, at the very first moment that you called it Matzah Shmura, and it was the thing, as Soloveitchik explained?
Yeah. I mean, of course, there are this difference between everything here and everything. The analogies, or it's not analogies. I play with certain things, but I think it's exactly this. There is a play here because it says Be'ikar Adin. Yeah, Be'ikar Adin Matzah Shmura. So as if it's entirely abstract. But the point is, I think that's the point. That's he doesn't say. That's I say. Okay. The point is I mean, I just like try to take that's this Ikar Adin is just only expressed. You have it now as Ikar Adin after you already have the text. Huh? You don't have the Ikar Adin before you have the text. If you have different text, you have different thing. You have it now. That is, but he's right to put it Ikar Adin. He's as if putting it is ahistorically and so on. But he's right because what he's trying to say, your concept is double. It's not like, of course, it happens after the text and after the and so on. So of course, it can also be different in a way that's what is the moment. It can be with Van Gogh that's perhaps at this time. There is no meaning. You know, there are also, I never saw it myself, but I read that there was a discussion about a person whose name is Picasso, and he wanted to call his shop Picasso, and he was banned from that by the law, because Picasso, although it was his name by birth, not like was calling himself in order to make publicity, take publicity, that was his name, and he wanted to call his shop Picasso, and he was not allowed by the law. I mean, he had to take it because Picasso is already branded on Picasso. Now, so all of these things are all possible. I mean, you can have, but that is exactly, you open entirely, the whole field is based on that moment when the name becomes part of the object. It's not like I can tell you when. Each time I will have, that's exactly the reading of the text. Each time I will have to analyze how exactly it comes into the thing. But it's, yeah, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, so you said just earlier that you kind of summed up her plans for new as reading the concept, in this case, the concept of Montessori as prior to text.
Yeah.
And earlier today, you gave what I took to be a slightly different explanation, which was that her client tries to move the text outside of reality, or to kind of separately, to not try and like the historical critical method, use historical reality or text critical realities to try and anchor the text, to see the text as a kind of enclosed system, a game with an empty center, and the concept exists kind of in the empty center. And to me, those are kind of two different approaches. And I was wondering if you could.
Can you just repeat the first option? What was it? The first
one?
Yeah.
So that's the one that you said just a few minutes ago, which was, you said that Recline reads the concept as prior to the text, which I took to mean something like there's this conceptual world out there.
That's what I said now, yes?
Yeah, just now.
Okay.
So there's this conceptual world that exists out there, and those concepts get filtered down into the text such that we can go back and read the Yerushalmi, the Bavli, and we can get some inkling of what that, and even the Rambam, we can get some inkling of what that concept is. But to me, that seems different from saying that the text is a closed system that doesn't need to be anchored.
No, you're absolutely right. I have to refine my statement. It's like, not that I think that Reb Chaim is saying Ikar text, that's Ikar, so that they are trading the entire historical and so on. That is really, there is this concept. I said that in his view, that's the concept is never something that you can trace back in a fully to the first moment. That's the point, actually, in a way. And again, that will take me, I just will say it in a slogan, and if it doesn't make sense, yeah. But I think that is the main point, one of the main points of Nietzsche genealogy, in contrast to the false understanding of Foucault. I think Nietzsche speaks about, in the genealogy, there is some passage where he comes to the point of saying, it is not that you can take punishment and trace it back to the moment when it was simple. That is impossible. There is, because at that moment, exactly, you lose the meaning of punishment. Because we have like this complexity of context. But what you do in genealogy is that you see that this concept, which is one, is has a history which you can never really feel back. So it is a punishment as we understand it. But it's, and that's what I meant here. It's not like I meant that. He says, if you Ikar Din, because now if I look at at your concept of matzah shmura, then it is already after. I have to say that, or I can say that it's always there without being there, because this is the nature of concept, not because of matzah shmura. Yeah, it's always in this way part of the textual game. That's what I meant. But you're right. I didn't formulate it well. Okay, you can sleep. Now you're allowed to sleep. Now you don't have to feel guilty if you sleep.